Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's brief ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, in this video, we're going to get straight into the discussion about La Nina. This has been one of the things I've really struggled with forecasting this late winter and early spring. It's been the strength of this La Nina. I had originally thought we'd see more of our coldest ocean temperatures staying here over to the east, but as of late, we've seen stronger trade winds that have just surged across the central part of the Pacific, giving us kind of a resurgence here of a stronger La Nina. And that was just not well forecast by me over the last several weeks. Now, thinking about that, I'm looking out at some of the longer term models. First, the CFSV2, it stands for Climate Forecasting System version 2. But we're looking really long term now, because the question is, as we've now gotten into March, are we going to continue to see colder ocean temperatures? And what does this mean for spring, summer, and then eventually fall? And we know the CFSV2 has a tendency in the longer range to hang on to persistence. It's biased toward persistence, but this is quite remarkable here that the CFSV2 through April, May, June, July keeps it down here firmly into moderate strength La Nina and then allows that to persist through summer, even out into October, November. It has very few ensemble members that bring this back into neutral. That would be between a half a degree below and a half a degree above average in terms of the ocean temperatures, and does not develop an El Nino. Now, this is in stark contrast to what the European model is doing. It's got a very quick recovery from all of its ensemble members going into June, having INSO neutral conditions, and even some of its ensemble members into El Nino territory by late summer. Most of its forecast members keep this near average, and a few of them are suggesting going back into a weak La Nina for next fall. But what's remarkable here is the difference between the models. Again, this is the European and this is the CFSV2, both forecasting entirely different outcomes for this La Nina that we're currently dealing with. Now, I can show you the historical performance using this website of the European model. Let me just go back to last year. If we go back to March of 2021, the model was also kind of over-predicting the ocean temperatures, and the dashed line shows you what actually happened. They actually stayed more on the cooler side of things. We still had neutral conditions all summer, but it then quickly faded into the fall back into a La Nina. That was partly helping along the upcoming the previous hurricane season. And if this is kind of goes into that repeat cycle of what we saw last year and a third La Nina, that could really influence the hurricane season for 2022. I discussed that in the longer video. Now, I want to also show you some statistical evidence of what could happen. So we're going to use the IRI research group out of Columbia University. In blue, you see the probability of having La Nina. In gray, it's the probability of being neutral. And in red, the probability of El Nino. What you notice is that by summer going into fall and early winter, the greatest probabilities are to have neutral conditions or La Nina conditions. This is the current forecast information we have. Only a 15% chance, even by next October, November, December, of going into El Nino. Again, the implications of this are huge, especially for the drought risk in the west. This is important for the drought situation in the central plains. This is also critical for the upcoming hurricane forecast. La Nina years tend to allow for lower wind shear in the Atlantic and more frequent and stronger hurricanes. That's what I'm concerned about. So all of this is going to have to be monitored very carefully, and we're going to continue to forecast it in the coming days and weeks. Looking back over the forecast performance in the last 30 days, the models over-forecast precipitation from the southern and central plains into the western Corn Belt. They got this right, and they got the dryness in the west pretty right. And without a subtropical form of the jet stream, with no southwest flow into this area, these regions are going to continue to stay dry. So what we have to ask is that redevelopment of the La Nina going to kind of perpetuate this, going to keep that going? And that discussion goes over to looking at the MJO, because ultimately what the La Nina tends to influence is the position and strength of the MJO. And that's what governs the transfer of heat and momentum out of the tropics. That's why we look at all of this together. Well, over the next 15 days, starting today on the 14th, going out to the 29th, you're going to notice that the MJO is going to currently be in phase 2 and then slowly move to phase 3 and into phase 4 and possibly into phase 5. But we've been recently reading quite a bit of research on the Mgo Progression, and it suggests that at this time of year, there's about a 40% chance that the Mgo will fail to get out here into phase 6, 7, and 8, which is in the Western Pacific. And there's a reason why we're concerned about that. You see, we saw the model do the same thing, or at least we saw the ocean temperatures in the MGO performance do the same thing in February into March. It was out here in phase 3 back in February, then collapsed instead of going over into phase 4 and 5 through March. Then by mid-March, it's now popped back out into phase 2. And the models are once again bringing it through phase 3. And I'll just leave this arrow here showing you the forecast. What might happen is it comes into phase 4 but collapses back into null space. If it pops all the way through, that would represent a major shift. That would tell me that the La Nina is fading hard, but we haven't seen evidence of that. Which means I think we're going to see the MGO hanging out a lot in this space in the coming weeks. And therefore, the precipitation and temperature pattern would go on kind of a wash, rinse, repeat cycle. Let me show you what I mean. The new long-range update from the European model, looking at the time period of the 24th of March to the 24th of April, you can see where it keeps things wet. Northern Plains, Southern Canadian Prairie, into the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio River Valley, Tennessee Valley, into New England. The models did back off on how dry this is forecast. And we do have a system, actually 2 systems, that are going to come out of Colorado and go through the driest parts of the plains. But no real indication of much above average precipitation in the west. And we're going to keep this whole region looking drier simply because we've yet to develop good southwest flow. In other words, the jet stream is doing a lot of this. And that's what's keeping the pattern looking like this. I'll talk about temperatures here in just a few moments. Lately, over the last week, the drought monitor, next one that'll come out on Thursday, will show some major improvements in this area due to some very, very heavy rainfall. We also saw some of this, of course, coming into snow here and then big snows into New England over the weekend. But very heavy rains in the southeast, mid-Atlantic, Tennessee Valley, eastern Corn Belt. And that snow, there's where the heaviest bands fell over the weekend. And before that, it came right through this part of the Midwest. But all of the snow is melting quickly. In fact, look at the sunset today. I'll take you back to middle of the day. See the snow in New England? Watch, just melting away here under the warmth. And now what we're keeping an eye on is severe weather coming out of the southern plains. Let's go take a look at it. If we zoom in here on Texas, you're going to see that this afternoon, I'm going back in time, watch the storms blow up right here on this frontal boundary. And they're taking off. And some of these storms are becoming severe. Multiple strong thunderstorms in 2 separate lines here going through eastern Texas right now this evening. There's something else going on here too. You can see wildfire smoke right in through here. We'll take a look at that in a second. And then a big push of dust out of the north coming into western Texas, into southwestern Texas. See it there? I'll go back and forth. You can see the wildfire smoke and the dust coming on that front going through western Texas. Those severe storms are going to continue to move east, and that's where our first of 3 systems is going to be. We've got a low pressure cell here, severe weather in eastern Texas, parts of Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. And those strong storms are going to spread heavier rains through the southeast, eventually coming up into parts of North Carolina, Virginia. We have another system that's going to merge here later this week and run up like this, and multiple coastal fronts will hit the west coast, bringing precipitation into California. So taking a look at that, let's go look at the severe weather risk tonight. This is from the Storm Prediction Center, the area we're watching, and there is a severe thunderstorm watch out for this area as I'm recording this. Our high-res NAM model is showing us that the hazard threat is primarily going to be from that long line of thunderstorms into there, probably bringing in severe straight-line winds. But there will be embedded hail in this, and we're also anticipating seeing the chance for some of these storms to rotate and produce tornadoes. So this is a multi-hazard threat here through this evening. The overnight hours are going to be quite active through Arkansas, getting down into Louisiana. And this system, let's watch it from Tuesday morning through the day on Tuesday into Wednesday. It's going to continue to spread into the southeast and eventually make this turn up toward parts of North Carolina and Virginia. At that point, we'll have a front that tails off right here to the next system coming out of Colorado. And where did this one come from? Well, it is the front that swept through today and into tonight and tomorrow morning into the northwest. See it there? I'm looking right up here. That's bringing precip into the Columbia Basin, western Oregon, eastern Oregon, and eventually into Idaho, but misses out on an area that desperately needs it, which is Montana. So where does this end up getting? Snow here in the high plains of Colorado by Thursday. From there, we need to go on and do our multi-model analysis to see where things go. And these models really diverge quite a bit after this first system goes through. So let's get through that, and let's start talking now about what comes out on Thursday here. You see, the problem isn't necessarily in Colorado, it's in Texas. The GFS brings the low here by Thursday afternoon. The European is there. Now watch this. The European's going to keep the low slower and farther to the south. The GFS much stronger and much farther to the north like that. They're going to really split on the path. Ready? This goes from Thursday night into Friday morning, Friday afternoon, and evening. Now what do you see? By Friday evening, the GFS took the low here, the European took the low there. The European loses the strength of this low. The GFS keeps it quite tight. Bigger snows on the backside. We're going to see strong storms out ahead of it here. And that's just going to be the first time we see stronger storms across this area with the next two systems. So already the models have split on the forecast of this system. What happens with the European is this weekend it brings heavy snows into New England. The GFS spreads those snows in Ontario and Quebec. That's the difference in the track. System number 2 is already taking shape in the west. Another coastal front going all the way down into central California. Love seeing that. But that wave goes over the mountains, and by next Monday afternoon and evening, this is where they emerge. The GFS is here in Colorado. The European is much farther to the south and weaker. So the net effect on the severe weather side of it is we're going to watch this whole area next Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night. That's in both models. Okay? But look at how much more snow and rain comes up into the western, northern plains into this area. Not even there in the European. So we play this forward, and that second system comes out, and it's almost like a repeat of what we just saw. The GFS, the European. Much different trajectories here. Both of them bringing severe weather risk to the south, but it's the west that I'm most concerned about with this next system. So we put all that together and just look at the next 7 days. Here we go. This is the European forecast for total precipitation. This is the GFS. Now look at your area. I'm going to go back again. GFS, European. GFS, European. Now we can subtract one from the other. And this is the region where the GFS is much more aggressive on that northern track with the heavier rainfall. That's shown in these colors, and snow, by the way. And then this would be in the greens where the European is wetter. So most of the change is primarily on the eastern side of the Rockies. That's where we see the biggest differences. Snowfall, they both do about the same here in the western mountains. But this is the European solution for snowfall through the next 7 days. And here's the GFS. Look at the difference with the more amplified system, bringing the snow into Ontario and Quebec versus the European, which leaves it here in New England. Major differences at this point in the models, which we got to watch carefully. Whoops, here we go again, European, GFS. What a difference. In week 2, though, they both feature this system. This would be next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right here, coming out of the southern plains and ripping over toward the southeast. And that's why both models are going to bring a severe weather threat Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in through this area, maybe getting up into the Midwest. But this is the week 2 precipitation pattern. Drier in California, no subtropical jet. But that trough that starts here and sweeps across, it's not only in the European keeping all this wet, it's in the GFS as well. See it? Very good agreement. Let's finish up with a quick discussion on temperatures. Models nailed the extent of the frost this past weekend. You're looking at a map that shows you from March 8th through March 13th in gray the extent of frost conditions, which got into southern Texas, along the Gulf Coast and northern part of Florida. Well, what are the temperatures doing now? Well, if we take a look, here was Monday's highs. We've already seen these. So Tuesday, we're going to watch the warm sector open up ahead of this system. There it is. And then by Thursday, it begins to take shape right here. So all that warmth spreads out ahead of it. That's when we get the snow chances into Colorado and New Mexico. Well, into Friday, the cooler air tries to make it through, but there's not a major cool-off behind this system. And already by the weekend, we've already rebounded in temperatures ahead of the next system, which comes out on Monday in Colorado. But the models, even looking out there day 5 through 10, don't bring in significant shots at colder air. In fact, even to the end of the month, they're resisting bringing in colder air. When do we see our next chances? Well, it's going to be when the MGO resets. And there's some indications that that's going to occur. That reset could happen at the end of March, beginning of April, with another cold shot in the eastern half of the country. We see mild conditions in Texas, but we're going to watch out for a cold shot to possibly push all the way here from the Mid-South through the eastern side of the United States, really this whole area. And it's not only here, but it's in the CFSV2 showing up colder as well. So that's why I was concerned about the MGO failing to get out into the Pacific and repeating its behavior that we've seen for the last 30 days. What this is going to lead into a discussion about is going to be on whether or not we do get the early start with a mild April, and I'll be studying that for the next week and presenting you what I've got. Thank you for your attention. Talk to you again on Thursday.